Welcome to the Graham Architectural Products Glazing and De-glazing training video. This video is intended to instruct building maintenance personnel on procedures to glaze and de-glaze a window or door manufactured by Graham Architectural Products. Most of Graham windows are wet glazed, but some are dry glazed. The difference can be seen by looking at the glazing. Our wet glaze system has a silicone bead on the exterior, glazing bead on the interior, and a bulb gasket that holds the glass in place. Our dry glaze system uses a gasket on the interior and exterior and a glazing bead that holds the glass in place. Whenever handling glass, do everything possible to protect the edge of the glass from breakage. Small chips in the edge of the glass can turn into cracks in the glass over time. We are going to start our instruction with the wet glaze system. If the glass is broken, each of these steps will need to be done with care so not to get cut on the edges of the glass. The first step is to remove the glazing beads. You will need a wide, flat blade to drive into the gap between the glazing bead and the frame or the sash. You can use a flat chisel or putty knife, however we recommend a sharpened piece of polycarbonate or acrylic. Drive the flat edge into the gap, push in and toward the center of the window at the same time. Remove the other glazing beads in the same manner. If you have a second person to hold the glass when you are cutting the sealant, you can remove the glazing bead at the head. If you do not have a second person, leave the glazing bead at the head in place. Here are some other examples of glazing beads that are used on Graham windows. In some cases, you will need to use a fulcrum and a metal flat blade to pry the glazing bead loose. On some windows, the glazing bead has to be removed by slipping a flat blade under the interior leg of the bead and push against the front leg of the bead while pushing up on the bead. Many sash or vent glazing beads are flush with the face of the sash or vent. These can be easily removed with a flat blade or a sharpened piece of polycarbonate. Push the edge of the blade in between the sash or vent and the glazing bead and pry away. The sealant will need to be cut to remove the glass from the window frame. To cut the sealant, you can use a manual knife, a specialty tool for deglazing, or a powered reciprocating tool. If the sash can be removed, it will be easier to perform this work on a table. If the window does not have a sash or the sash cannot be easily removed, the side of the glass that has the sealant will need to be accessed. Here we are showing how to use a flat blade to cut the sealant. Specialty tools can be used for this process, provided the instructions for using the tool are followed. Soapy water will make this process easier. Specialty power tools can also be used. In any of these procedures, soapy water will help in the process, and the technician will have to pay particular attention to cutting the sealant in the corners. If necessary, remove the glazing bead at the head. We recommend a glass cup to remove the glass. You will usually have to pull a little bit to break the last little bit of sealant loose. Remove the setting blocks, taking note of where they were located. Use a sharp blade to remove as much of the old sealant as possible. Once that is complete, use isopropyl alcohol to wipe away any residual sealant. Dry the glazing leg with a clean, dry cloth. Apply a generous bead of structural silicone sealant to the glazing leg. Make sure not to have any gaps in the sealant. Replace the setting blocks on the sill at the same locations where they were taken from. Carefully set the glass on the setting blocks on the sill and rotate the glass into the opening. Press the glass against the glazing leg. Make sure that the glass is firmly seated into the sealant. Look for squeeze out of the sealant between the glass and the glazing leg. Reapply any remaining setting blocks in the locations where they came from. Starting at the head, reinstall the glazing beads. You may need to use a wood block and a rubber hammer to drive the glazing bead back into place. You will need to clean up the squeeze out of the sealant from the exterior. Use isopropyl alcohol and a clean dry rag to clean the remaining sealant off the glass and frame. This will complete the procedure for a wet glazed product. The next system that we will look at is a dry glaze window. Typically, you will not need to access the exterior of the window to replace this glass. The first step is to remove the glazing wedge gasket from the glazing beads. You can do this using a putty knife. Gently pry the wedge up out of the glazing bead. Once all the wedge gaskets have been removed, remove the glazing beads using a sharp, flat blade. However, we recommend leaving the glazing bead at the head until you are ready to remove the glass. A Attach a glass cup to the glass and carefully remove the glass. There may be some sealant at the corners of the exterior glazing gasket. Take note of where the setting blocks are located. Check the exterior glazing gasket to make sure that it has not come loose. Apply a small amount of sealant at the corners of the exterior glazing gasket. Then place the setting blocks at the sill where they were originally located. Carefully place the glass onto the setting blocks at the sill and rotate the glass into the window. Install the glazing bead at the head before letting go of the glass. Install the remaining glazing beads and install the glazing wedge gasket on the interior. If new glazing wedge is being used, cut the wedge gasket approximately 3/8 of an inch longer than the daylight opening. If the wedge gasket is not lubricated, use dishwashing detergent mixed with water to lubricate the gasket. Drive the ends of the wedge gasket into the corners of the glazing beads. Then drive the center of the wedge gasket into the center of the glazing bead. There should be extra glazing gasket to allow for shrinkage. Using a wooden block and rubber hammer, drive the rest of the wedge gasket into place. Do not try to use a roller for the gasket because it will stretch the gasket. This completes the procedures for deglazing and reglazing of Graham windows. For further questions regarding this procedure, contact Graham Architectural Products at 717-849-8100.